He died alone in a bathtub in Paris, at the height of fame, adored by millions, yet quietly falling apart inside. So how did one of the most iconic voices in rock history end like this? The world knew him as a symbol: wild, beautiful, untouchable. A man who seemed to have everything: fame, power, desire. But behind the image, something was already slipping. He wasn't just a rock star. He was the voice of a generation, and at the same time, a man trying to escape it. While crowds screamed his name, he was searching for something else, something deeper, something quieter, something no one seemed to notice. Because the truth is, this wasn't a sudden ending. It was a slow unraveling, a path shaped by pressure, by expectation, by a life lived too fast, and perhaps too far from who he really wanted to be. In the final 24 hours of his life, there were signs, moments that, at the time, didn't seem unusual. But looking back, they feel impossible to ignore. Fame, loneliness, addiction, a relationship that blurred the line between love and destruction, and a decision that would change everything. The full story is far darker than most people realize. To understand what really happened, we have to go back to where it all began. He was born far from the spotlight. A small town in Florida. Quiet, ordinary, forgettable. But nothing about his life would stay that way. His father was a naval officer, which meant one thing: movement. Again, and again, and again. By the time he was a teenager, he had already moved 9 times. 9 different places. 9 chances to belong. And 9 times starting over. It never quite worked. There was always a distance between him and everyone else at home. That distance grew even deeper. His father believed in order, discipline, structure, the kind of life that made sense. But Jim, he was moving in a different direction. Quiet at first, then restless, then difficult to control. He spent long hours alone, down in the basement, painting, writing, thinking. Not like other teenagers. There was something darker, already forming. He wasn't just reading books. He was absorbing them. Writers most people his age had never heard of. Voices that questioned everything. Authority, reality, truth. And slowly, his view of the world began to change. It wasn't simple anymore. It wasn't safe. There was something underneath it. Something chaotic. Something dangerous. And he saw it earlier than most. But there was one moment, long before all of this, that stayed with him. He was just a child, 4 years old, driving through the desert with his family. And then, an accident. A truck overturned. Bodies on the road. Silence, mixed with something he didn't understand. He would later say that something entered him that day. A spirit. A presence. Something that never left. Whether it was real or just the mind of a child trying to process something too heavy, It didn't matter, because from that moment on, he was different. As he got older, that difference became harder to hide. At school, he pushed back. At home, he resisted more. And eventually, it crossed a line. Alcohol came in, not slowly, but completely. It wasn't just drinking. It was escape. A way to let go of control. A way to feel something, or maybe to feel nothing at all. And once it started, it didn't stop. By the time he reached adulthood, the distance between him and the world was no longer subtle. It was obvious. He didn't belong. Not in school. Not in his family. Not in the life that had been planned for him. And soon, he would make a decision. That would change everything. He would leave it all behind. But what he was really running from was already inside him. He didn't follow the path laid out for him. He walked away from it. California, 1964. A new beginning. Or at least, that's what it looked like. He enrolled in film school at UCLA. Not music, not performance, film. Because even then, he wasn't trying to become a rock star. He was trying to understand something deeper. Images, stories, meaning. But inside that world, he still didn't quite fit. He observed more than he participated, watched more than he spoke. Until one day, on a beach in Venice, everything shifted. He ran into an old classmate, Ray Manzarek. A simple conversation. Nothing unusual. "What have you been doing?" And Jim answered, "I've been writing poetry. Lyrics. Fragments of something not fully formed." Ray asked him to sing one. And in that moment, something clicked. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. But it was different. Raw. Visual. Almost hypnotic. Ray saw it immediately. This wasn't just music. This was something else. Something people hadn't heard before. And just like that, a band was born. Not carefully planned. Not strategically built. But pulled together, almost accidentally. They called themselves The Doors. A name inspired by poetry, by the idea of perception, of breaking through into something beyond the ordinary. At first, no one was paying attention. Small clubs, late nights, uncertain crowds. At the Whiskey A Go-Go, they became the house band. That's where it started to change. At first, he wouldn't even face the audience. He sang with his back turned, almost as if he didn't want to be seen. But something inside him began to shift, slowly. Then suddenly, the same man who once avoided attention began to command it. Not in a controlled way, in a way that felt unpredictable, dangerous. You couldn't look away. He didn't just perform songs. He became something else on stage. Part poet, part actor, part something harder to define. People didn't just listen. They reacted. The energy in the room changed. And once that happened, there was no going back. In 1967, everything exploded. Their first album was released, and almost overnight, they were everywhere. The charts, the radio, the conversation. They weren't just successful, they were unavoidable, placed alongside names like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. But they didn't sound like them. They didn't follow the same rules. There was something darker in their music, something heavier. It stood out. And so did he. Jim Morrison became the center of it all. The face, the voice, the image. And the image was powerful. He had the look, effortless, magnetic, the kind of presence that didn't need explanation. And the world responded. Everywhere he went, attention followed. Not just admiration, obsession. He became more than a musician. He became a symbol, a fantasy, a projection of everything people wanted to see. But there was a problem. That wasn't who he believed he was. Not really. He didn't want to be remembered for how he looked. He wanted to be taken seriously, as a writer, as a thinker, as someone who had something to say. But the louder the crowds became, the harder that became, because the world wasn't listening to the words. They were watching the image, and the image kept growing, bigger, stronger, more impossible to escape. He leaned into it. At first, played the role, the Lizard King, a persona that gave him freedom on stage, freedom to be wild, unpredictable. But over time, that persona started to take over. What began as expression became expectation. Every show had to go further, push harder, be louder, and slowly, control started to slip. Alcohol was always there. In the beginning, it loosened him, helped him perform, helped him step into that version of himself. But it didn't stay that way. It never does. What once felt like freedom became something else, something heavier, more unpredictable, more dangerous, and people began to notice. Not all at once, but in moments. A performance that felt off, a reaction that didn't make sense, a shift in energy, small cracks. At first, easy to ignore, but they were there, and they were growing, because behind the success, behind the image, something was building, something that wouldn't stay hidden forever. And when it finally surfaced, it would change everything. From the outside, it looked like he had reached the top. Fame was no longer something he was chasing. It was something surrounding him. Everywhere. Crowds grew larger. Shows became louder. And his name became impossible to ignore. But something else was growing too. Pressure. Not sudden, not obvious, but constant. The kind that builds quietly until it becomes everything. At the center of it all was a relationship that mirrored his life. Intense, unstable, impossible to ignore. Her name was Pamela Corson. To him, she wasn't just someone he loved. She was something deeper. He called her his cosmic mate. And in many ways, she was. They were drawn to each other. Again and again, no matter what happened. But their connection was never calm. It was fire, passion, and chaos. They fought. They separated. They came back together, over and over again. Not because it was easy, but because neither of them knew how to let go. And slowly, their lives began to reflect each other. The same intensity, the same instability, the same pull towards something destructive. While his public image continued to rise, his private life was becoming harder to control. Inside the band, tension was growing. At the beginning, They were a unit, equal, collaborative. But that balance didn't last. The spotlight shifted. More and more, it focused on him. The headlines didn't say The Doors anymore. They said his name. And even if no one said it out loud, it changed things. Resentment didn't explode. It built. Quietly. In moments. In looks. In the space between them. But the biggest shift didn't happen backstage. It happened in public. One night, in Miami. Hot. Packed. Unpredictable. And he had been drinking. A lot. At first, it looked like another performance. Wild. Chaotic. But then, it crossed a line. What exactly happened that night? Depends on who you ask. Some say he exposed himself. Some say he didn't. Even the people closest to him weren't sure. But in the end, it didn't matter. Because the damage was already done. The reaction was immediate. Not just from the audience, but from the entire country. Authorities stepped in. Charges were filed. Serious ones. Suddenly, this wasn't just music anymore. It was legal, public, dangerous. And the system was watching him closely. The FBI had already taken interest, not just because of that night, but because of what he represented. His lyrics, his influence, the way he challenged authority. At a time when America was already on edge, that made him a problem. And problems don't get ignored. They get controlled. The backlash spread quickly. Radio stations stopped playing their music. Concerts were canceled. Promoters backed away. The same industry that had lifted him up began to pull away. And the public followed. The image shifted. From icon to liability. From mystery to embarrassment. From fascination to rejection. And for him, that shift was devastating. Not because he lost fame, but because of how he was being seen. He never wanted to be a joke. He never wanted to be remembered as someone out of control. But that's exactly what was happening. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. The trial came. The verdict followed. Guilty. Prison time. Even if he wasn't behind bars yet. The weight of it was already there, hanging over everything. Every decision, every moment. And something inside him began to change. Not suddenly, but deeply. He became quieter, more distant, more aware of something he couldn't escape. Mortality. Around him, others were already falling. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, gone. Young, unexpected. And he noticed. He talked about it. Sometimes as a joke, sometimes not. Saying things like, he might be next. At the time, it didn't seem real. But looking back, it feels different. Because by then, the cracks were no longer small. They were visible. In his performances, in his behavior, in the way he carried himself. The energy was different. Less controlled, less focused, more unpredictable, more fragile. And eventually, even the band reached a limit. There are moments you can't come back from. One performance where everything fell apart. No control, no structure, just chaos. And when it ended, something else ended with it. They made a decision. No more live shows. No more stage. The thing he lived for was gone. And without it, there was a silence, a space that nothing else could fill. Recording continued. Music still existed, but it wasn't the same. Because for him, it was never just about sound. It was about connection, expression, release. And now, that outlet was closing. So he made another decision. He would leave. Not just the stage, but everything around it. The fame, the pressure, the image. He went to Paris. A new place, a new start. At least, that's what he hoped. But sometimes, a change of place doesn't change anything. Because what you're running from isn't around you. It's inside you. And in the end, that's the one thing you can't escape. Paris was supposed to be a fresh start, a quiet escape, a place where he could finally become who he always believed he was. A poet, not a rock star, not an image, not a symbol, just a man with words. And for a moment, it almost worked. He walked the streets freely. No crowds, no noise, no expectations. He looked healthier, calmer, almost at peace. But appearances can be deceiving, because underneath that calm, nothing had really changed. The damage was already there. Years of drinking, of pushing limits, of living without restraint. It doesn't disappear overnight. It stays. In the body, in the mind, waiting. At first, the signs were small. A cough that didn't go away. Shortness of breath. Moments of exhaustion. That didn't make sense. But he ignored them. He always had. Control was never something he wanted to hold on to. And now, it was slipping completely. There was another problem too. Something quieter, but just as dangerous. He couldn't write. Not the way he used to. The words didn't come. Or when they did, they didn't feel right. For someone who saw himself as a poet first, that was unbearable. Because without that, who was he? The world still saw a rock star, but he didn't want that anymore. And he couldn't become what he wanted to be. He was stuck in between, and that space became heavier each day. The isolation didn't help. In Los Angeles, there was chaos. But there was also movement, people, energy. In Paris, there was silence, and silence has a way of making things louder, inside your own head. He wasn't surrounded by fans anymore. He was alone with his thoughts, and they weren't quiet. They circled, again and again, about his life, his choices, his future, or maybe the lack of one. Around this time, he started talking more openly about death. Not dramatically, not for attention, just casually, as if it was something he had already accepted, as if it was coming. And maybe, in some way, he knew. His relationship with Pamela was still there, still intense, still unpredictable. They loved each other, in their own way. But love wasn't the only thing they shared. There was chaos, there was instability, and there were substances that made everything worse. Pamela had her own struggles, Heroin. Something he never fully accepted. Something he tried to stay away from. For a long time. He did. But when you're surrounded by something long enough, the line begins to blur, especially when everything else is falling apart. The days leading up to July were not dramatic. No big events. No clear warning signs. Just a slow decline, which makes it harder to see because there's no moment you can point to and say, that's where it went wrong. But then, July 2nd, the final day begins. Morning, he's asleep. Nothing unusual, but time is already running out. By midday, he's walking through the city with a friend, trying to appear normal, but his body tells a different story. Spasms, hiccups that won't stop, moments where he struggles just to stay steady. It's not subtle, it's visible. And still, he insists he's fine. He always does. Because admitting something is wrong would mean facing it. And that's something he's avoided for a long time. They walk. They talk. They try to pass the time. But there's a feeling something isn't right. You can sense it, even if you don't understand it yet. Afternoon fades into evening. He drinks. Not heavily, not wildly, just enough. But by now, it doesn't take much. His body is already exhausted, already struggling, and alcohol only pushes it further. Still, he asks for more, not because he needs it, but because it's familiar, because it fills the space, the silence, the loneliness. By night, he's back with Pamela. They seem normal, almost peaceful, watching a film, walking through the city, like any other couple. But underneath that, something is building, something final. Back at the apartment, the night continues. Music plays, old recordings, familiar sounds, a reminder of what once was. And then, a decision. Small in the moment, but irreversible. He takes heroin, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of despair, maybe just to feel something different. We don't know, but what we do know is that it changes everything. At first, nothing dramatic happens. They relax. They drift. Time slows down. But inside his body, something is going wrong. His breathing becomes difficult, heavy, unstable. He wakes up, struggling. Pamela sees it. She wants to call for help. A doctor, someone. But he refuses. Even now, he won't give up control. Or maybe he just doesn't believe it's that serious. So she lets it go. And eventually, she goes to bed, thinking it will pass. But it doesn't. He walks into the bathroom, alone, turns on the water. A hot bath. Something simple, something ordinary. The last thing he will ever do. Hours pass. Silence fills the apartment. No movement. No sound. Morning comes. Light enters the room. And something feels wrong. She wakes up. Looks around. He's not there. She goes to the bathroom and finds him. In the bathtub. Still, unmoving. At first, it doesn't feel real. Because with him, nothing ever was simple. He played with reality. with perception. So maybe this is just another moment, another act. But it isn't. This time, there's no movement, no breath, no return. By the time help arrives, it's already over. The official cause: heart failure. No autopsy, no investigation, just an ending. But not everyone believed it. They still don't. Because when someone like him dies, the story doesn't end. It changes. Rumors begin. Theories spread. Overdose. Cover-up. Disappearance. Some believe he never died, that he escaped, finally free from everything that defined him. But the truth is often simpler and heavier. A life pushed too far, for too long, until the body and the mind couldn't keep going. And just like that, one of the most iconic voices of a generation was gone at 27. In the end, it didn't happen on a stage, not in front of a crowd, not with music playing. It happened in silence. A quiet apartment in Paris, a bathtub, a closed door, and a life that had been moving too fast for too long finally stopped. He spent years trying to escape what the world saw in him: the image, the fame, the expectations. But in the end, he couldn't escape himself. And maybe that was the real struggle all along. The world called him a rock star, a symbol, a legend. But that's not how he saw himself. He wanted something else, something quieter, something deeper. A poet, someone whose words would be understood, not just heard. After his death, the mystery only grew. No autopsy, no clear answers, just questions. And over time, those questions became part of his legacy. Some still believe he never really died, that he walked away, left it all behind. But if you look closer, that doesn't feel true, because he was never the kind of person who could disappear quietly. Not really. Today, he rests in a cemetery in Paris, among writers, among poets, the place he always believed he belonged. And every year, people still come, not just to remember the music, but to feel something, something that hasn't faded. Because in the end, it was never just about fame. It was about a man who was searching for meaning in a world that only saw his image. And maybe that's why his story still stays with people, long after the music stops. For those who still believe, stories like this matter. This channel is for you.